Hi, everybody. I'm Tammy Spino, and this week I read the 2017 Technology Outlook report for Nordic schools. It discussed significant challenges impeding technology, solvable challenges, difficult challenges, and wicked challenges. Then it was like a second part to it, and that discussed time adoption 4 to 5 years. So as far as the solvable challenges, they talked about blending formal and informal learning together, like what you learn outside of school to what you learn inside of school. Gaps between technology and pedagogy. I always say that word wrong. And integrating technology into teacher education, which just simply means like teachers are not as educated technologically as they should be, and so therefore they can't, teach students. So in Norway, researchers are identifying focus areas for teacher education that model multimedia and authentic learning approaches. So then difficult challenges for technology adoptions were digital equity, balancing connected life and unconnected life, which I didn't know what that meant at first, but it was interesting to learn about. And then also school culture and infrastructure. So digital equity just refers to the fact that students don't have access to high-speed internet, so it's not an equitable situation. But the connected life and unconnected life is like, students have to understand that their usage in technology leaves an imprint, and what that imprint means, that footprint, like out there in the digital world. So what they do connected via the internet versus not connected, and how that's different, and how it kind of stays out there forever. And then wicked challenges were the achievement gap, which I think is just a holistic problem that we have, not just in technology. Systematic policies and synergies for better learning and teaching complex thinking. And one thing that they're doing in Sweden, they propose curriculum that'll integrate the use of digital tools for logical thinking, source critique, and creative problem solving. And then the time adoption, 4 to 5 years. They talked about speech translation, which allows students to talk globally with multi-languages and do like global projects. Virtual and remote laboratories are able to bring equipment from like physical science virtually through the internet. And let's see what else. Virtual assistants, they talked about that. We talked about that last week. Virtual reality and artificial intelligence, and they're using them for personalized learning aids for students. And then wearable technology, which we are doing as of right now, with our watches and our all that stuff. And they're actually in Sweden, scientists are developing ways to power wearable devices with your blood in order to inform medical applications. I thought that was like super cool.
Yeah, that's never heard of that one, but
I know, like that's crazy, right? Like I certainly don't know if we're doing that here in the US, but that is crazy. So it's really interesting for me to read what's happening overseas, as again, I think I've said this before, as opposed to what's happening here in the US.
Right. Yeah. And I think one thing of importance that you said was like everything we do online is creating some kind of digital like footprint essentially. So it's like tracking your digital identity, whether you know it or not, especially a device like your cell phone that you're using all the time. So I think that's one big thing that we need to, like, more people do need to become aware of.
Yeah. Especially children, because they put it out there and they don't realize that it's going to be out there forever.
Forever.
I was going to say, a lot of parents like post their kids and they're already starting like a digital blueprint for their kids and they don't even know.
I know.
Like, and once it's on the internet, it's always going to be there. So
I agree.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting. Okay, so I did the Horizon Report 2016 for higher education, and I did the important developments in educational technology. And so my ring, again, it focused on 6 developments, and then they were broken down into 3 time-related categories, which were, of course, the near term, midterm, and far term, which we've all heard of before from our previous readings. But one that I found that was interesting, probably because we already do it, was BYOD, bring your own device, or they called it BYOT, bring your own technology.
Okay.
And I think that's something that we're already doing. But what I did like is that, for people that don't know this, bring your laptop, your cell phone, whatever kind of device you have, and bring it to class, and you're working on it, you're learning on it. But as educators, like that's a common thing. We see that in the classrooms. But so, I think initially it was an issue because it was a distraction. But now I think it's not so much a question, should they bring it? It's how are you gonna, when they do bring it, how are you gonna have an effective strategy in place to help for them to use it, but also learn. So I thought that was like, that's a good way to kind of handle the situation. But it said that it gave students like a sense of ownership in their learning because they're comfortable and familiar with their device. And then one other thing is that there's a university that's in Denmark, and they're allowing kids to take exams using their own devices, which I thought was a little strange. Like who's to say? I mean, I know we have that now, but who's to say like on their own devices they're not going to cheat? I don't know. So I just made me kind of question that.
How do you monitor that?
Yeah. And then there was the thing about apps and how there's continued education outside of like the institution, because if you create apps, then they're able to go and do like videos and just do different things, and they can still get assessed like through apps. So they're still learning outside of the classroom. So that was pretty cool. I mean, it's
They
definitely
talk
we
about
already got.
how they make it equitable with the bringing your own device. Like, what do they do with children that don't have? Are they lending them devices or?
Well, in another section, I guess it would depend based on your school,
Mhm.
but there are some readings that said that it actually lowered the cost, because if you allow kids to bring it, then you don't have to spend as much in funding for all those devices. But I would assume that you would have to have some kind of backup plan for the ones that don't have it. So that's a really good question.
Okay, that makes sense.
My report was the K through 12 Horizon report, and it was actually pretty similar to yours, Tammy. It was significant challenges impeding technology adoption, and the difficult challenge of advancing digital equity and the wicked challenge of the achievement gap. I thought were pretty related. Um, the article talked a lot about like the lack of technology for lower income students. One of the things that stood out to me, it said that 5 million households with school-age children do not have technology in the home. And they were talking a lot about like how much homework kids have now that has to be done online or like through online programs. And those kids can't do their homework at home. So like they would either have to stay after school or go to a library. But they would have to like take extra steps from students that do have that available. And I thought that it related to the achievement gap because those students have to work that much harder to do the same type of thing. And I thought it was really interesting with the achievement gap, the factors that they were saying led to students not performing as well, like peer pressure and like who do they hang out with and what is their home life like. And students who are from lower income households are usually like latchkey kids who don't always have their parents there because their parents are usually working more hours to provide for them. But it did say that there were like initiatives started to kind of bridge that gap with the kind of making it even all over the board. It said that Google was doing this thing where it was providing gigabyte fiber connectivity like all across the area so that students would have access to high-speed internet so they would be able to do their homework. So I thought that was pretty cool that bigger companies were getting involved because realistically, schools are funded by public schools are funded by their community. And if the community itself is a lower income community, they still wouldn't be able to compete with like a private school. So I thought it was cool that like a corporation like Google was getting involved. But yeah, the report was pretty similar to yours.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting this week, the reading. I mean, At first it was like I wasn't getting into them. I was like, but now I think like I like it. Like I like learning about it. So
Yeah.
it's kind of
Yeah, they've been interesting for sure. Like I definitely learned and got perspective on things that I probably never would have considered or heard of before. So I think it's pretty cool.
definitely. Okay, ladies.
Right.
Well, nice to see you, and see you next week.
All right.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.